You're listening to the Superpower Up Podcast with your superpower experts. This is the place where we explore real-life superpowers and give you the tools to unlock your own.
Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Dawn Recla, your superpower expert, and I'm so delighted to have just a treat for you all today. Paul Barlow is joining us. He is the acting CEO for a project that is near and dear to my heart, LucisDollar. The Lucis family, I'm happy to say, is an extended family of mine. And I really, really enjoyed getting to know Paul. And the reason why I'm excited to bring him onto the show is that, one, he's just freaking brilliant. So he's been involved professionally in the networking marketing, direct selling industry for over 17 years. But that's like, you know, kind of the on paper kind of perspective. But he is absolutely brilliant in the solutions space, in the space of, you know, really intricate, how do you kind of solve these conundrums type of thing. That is 100% his space. And he has such amazing vision and outlook on where we're going as a society, what's happening, and some of the strategies that he has for how we're going to mitigate some of the stuff that we're in for. So that's a phenomenal space. He also has such a great worldview because he speaks English, Portuguese, Spanish, French, you were teaching, Italian, you know, all of these things, and spends a lot of time in other countries working in the business entrepreneurial space there. And so he brings that to the table as well, which I think is such a cool rounded out perspective. And so I'm really excited to talk with him today about this concept of the world is changing. And are you ready? Are you ready in your business? Are you ready in your mentality, in your personal life, in the essence of who you are? Because I know a lot of you are sitting in fear around that. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today and the role that Paul plays in that, the role Lucis plays in that, and specifically things like cryptocurrency, blockchain, and some of these new technologies, what those bring to the conversation. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Paul to the show. Welcome, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tonya. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, absolutely. Well, like I said before, I'm really delighted to have you here talking about this conversation. I think it's absolutely crucial. So let's jump right in and ask you, what are your superpowers?
Oh, my superpowers. So I would say, like you said, solutions. Finding solutions to problems is the number one thing that I do. I've got the ability to take problems or perceived problems, I guess I will call it that, you know, challenges and problems, and find the ways to synergistically put those together and figure out, you know, maybe out of the box solutions. Sometimes in the box is where you need to be too. So sometimes pick the in the box solution, sometimes out of the box solutions, but it's, I guess, kind of that ability to start at the 40,000 foot view and quickly drill down to then, okay, what do we do now? What do we do once we have the, you know, ideas, concepts, and then we've run into blocks along the way in any type of project. And I think that's, I call that a superpower too, being able to be flexible. It doesn't have to be just one type of, you know, project or business. It can be really just about anything. If you give me a few minutes to sit down and explain to me what's going on and what, challenges you're potentially having, I can go ahead and, generally speaking, figure out a quality way for you to get through those and get to the other side. So I focus on that more than anything. I guess also I'd like to say I've got a really big heart. I like to see the best in people, and I like to. I really see that. I see the positive. I see, you know, I always say in this day and age, I see so much dystopianism and doom and gloom and different things in the arts and in writing on the internet, all this. I'm like, I think things are great. I mean, obviously there is, you can look at things a certain way, but I see the positive, I see the love, I see the progress that we're making as a species, that the world is making. And I think sharing that with people is also something that I think I can bring to the table.
Well, and I think those things are really interconnected, because what I find is that the real viable, scalable, sustainable solutions for our world moving forward have that element to them, have the ability to look at, we're not talking like just positive thinking, but really the connectedness with all of us and developing solutions that are in the good of the whole. I know you too, you and I have talked at length about our passion around developing not just sustainable and scalable solutions, but really conscious solutions, like conscious driven solutions, heart driven solutions. You know, and I'm challenged right now to even come up with words that truly encapsulate, I think, sometimes the passion, the energy that comes between us in those dialogues, because a lot of it sounds really Pollyanna-ish or kumbaya-ish, but it is a part of where we're going. And there's this idea like this get mine and screw the rest of the world dialogue is just not lasting. It's not even in our own self-interest anymore. It's not self-preservation. It's none of that, so all the reasons why someone might choose to do that or a business might choose to take that approach are really being debunked. And so I like that you link those two powers together. Your ability to see into the future and kind of develop solutions that are in alignment with that, I think, is based in the fact that you're able to open yourself up and lead with your heart.
Well, thank you. And I agree with that. I'd say it's a worldview that starts with, once again, the positive and loving nature of things instead of, like I say, instead of me first, it's everybody. I'm part of the whole, and we're considering the whole first. And then when you can come at that and then bring real, executable steps to ways to make that type of thing happen, from that worldview, I guess that's the real challenge there for a lot of people is that generally speaking, a lot of good executors out there tend to think very selfishly, I guess I would say. And then a lot of people that are on the other side that are the love and light type of people tend not to execute very much. And so maybe bringing those two things together is I'm passionate about it and it's exciting. And that's what I love to do on a daily basis.
Well, and I appreciate that because that really is what superpower experts kind of exist to do in the world. So I like the synergy there, because we saw the exact same problem. Like we knew we needed to change, where some of those solutions were coming from, what frequency and what vibration people were sitting in when they came into those solutions, and also provide those who are already sitting in those spaces real actionable, executable steps. It reminds me of, I had a conversation one time with a guy, he was an aide to one of the congressmen, and he'd approached me asking me what side of the issues his client would need to be on in order for me to agree to work with him. And I was so confused by the question. I was like, I had that confused dog look on my face, like, like I'd been away from government too long at that point. And I was like, I don't care about the issues. And the words were out of my mouth before I could even stop them. And I'm like, what did I just say? Is that truth for me? And it was like, it felt really true for me. And so I sat with it for a second as he's got this like shocked look on his face. And I'm like, I really don't care where somebody lies on the issues. What I care more about is what frequency or vibration they're sitting in when they choose to dialogue about the issues. Because to me, that is what informs a viable solution. But if we're staunchly holding to a point and not willing to entertain other dialogue or even to expand ourselves into new spaces, then we just produce more of the same, and I'm not a more of the same type of gal. So that, I like that approach, and I think it's brilliant and it's easy to say, like we're going to bridge the gap between vision and executing. I think a lot of people claim to sit in that space, but far more challenging to hold yourself to. I think that you can give a lot of voice to, and I'll ask you to share with our audience, what is the connection in what you're able to do from a business perspective for these businesses that you get brought into, and the amount of growth and the seriousness with which you take your own, or which you address your own personal growth?
Right. So what comes to mind specifically on that is, it's funny because, like I say, this type of worldview or this type of vibration that we hold ourselves in the space, a lot of times people see it as incompatible with the business world because, and I would agree that a lot of the business world generally is operating in a lower vibrational state. But in the end, if you can kind of break it down and look at what is business in the first place, in the end, business is just the ability to bring value to the world. It's a mechanism through which we bring value to the world. And has it been bastardized and perverted and things over thousands of years? Sure, it has. But underlying, the concept, it's just like any other organization. It's got a specific motive, and they're trying to accomplish certain things. So for me, I'd say it's you got to understand that there's going to, human beings are both predictable and unpredictable, and it's about finding ways to create predictable outcomes in a business environment. And so what happens is I'm a big systems type of person, and that's where a lot of solutions come from. Because if you sit down and you look at, once again, any organization, it doesn't have to be a business. It could be, like I say, it could be nonprofits. It could be, religions or whatever, government, any of these types it's all the same things. Any human organization follows these same patterns, regardless of what the label is of what they're trying to accomplish. Okay. So you look at it and you say, okay, when you find issues, 90+% of the time, it comes down to the unpredictability of humanity. And what I mean by that is that's okay. We've got a situation here where people are not creating predictable results because there's no guidelines, expectations, in the end, systems to do that. And so that's where I come in and say, okay, what can we do here to create a more predictable result? What can we do here to create something where we're going to see, when we expect this and this happens most of the time, or hopefully all the time, right? But there's always exceptions, and that's how you deal with exceptions. There's all these things. So that's really it's finding a way to deal with, and because once you create those systems, you can create predictability, because then people, once they get into on a roll, and certain, like say, vibrationally in a certain space, and they can see certain things, well, then things start to make sense, and achieve the outcomes you want. So
absolutely,
that's where I really focus.
So let's take this out a little bit to the conversation of, you could apply that to just about any industry. I mean, certainly we have all these different projects and industries, and there's problems all over the world. If you just want to look, you can find problems all over the world. But why is an industry like cryptocurrency, and why specifically a project like Lucis, given what you bring to the table, what drew you into that concept?
Wow. Okay. So this is, I always say, my heart is in Lucis more than it's been in anything in years. And the reason being starts with the concept of cryptocurrency and blockchain in the first place. So when people look at it, what is showing in the world right now are the name Bitcoin, and you hear blockchain, and you hear some of these different things, and you see prices that are going up and down, and you hear of people becoming millionaires overnight and buying Lamborghinis with $100 that they put in 10 years ago or whatever, and all this kind of crazy stuff. But none of that really, that's all noise in my opinion. And what blockchain really is, and what this concept, the concept of Bitcoin, the concept of the underlying technology, which is called blockchain, which allows there to be this cryptocurrency, which is just a cryptographically protected way to exchange value. It puts the power back in the hands of the people. Because I see in society right now, there's a concurrent race to the top and race to the bottom when it comes to the sovereignty of the individual. And what that means is that they're at the race to the top, or the race to consolidation, is that world governments, organizations are more and more and more trying to take away people's rights. They're trying they're trying to systematize. They're trying to do the business thing. They're trying to make things predictable. They're trying to say, okay, we want the entire world to be 100% safe all the time, and to follow these exact rules, this exact thing. And then you get I'm not going to get too down rabbit holes or anything, but you've got elites that have control over a lot of resources, that want to keep it that way. They don't want that to change. So there's this entire movement towards consolidation and, like say, removing the individual's rights and doing that. Concurrently, there's a race the other direction to decentralization, to retaining those rights and going back even more, because they would say, hey, we've lost too many of these things already, and so we want to retain our individual freedom and our ability to express ourselves the way we want to express, to live the way we want to live, and all of that. And I fall into that camp much more because, once again, I'm a positive person. I believe in the power of individual people, and the power of the human creativity and the ability to go out there and create. And that I believe people need to be unfettered and unchained by and large to be able to do that. And that's exactly what blockchain does, is it allows us to decentralize the control of value, because it's been getting more and more centralized over the last 100+ years. I'll go back to 1917 in the United States with the founding of the Federal Reserve, and let's go from there forward. Since that time, money has gotten more and more and more controlled, and money is just a representation of value by central government, central banks, central. Well, blockchain is the movement, the preeminent movement that is going against that grain, that is putting the power back in the hands of the individuals to allow you to control your own money, control your own destiny, control where your value goes and how you decide to put that value out there in the world.
Wow, that's so powerful. I'm so excited for this conversation. As you and I have talked about it, I see cryptocurrency when people really, well, namely my husband, really kept bugging me to kind of take a look at it, and to, before we added in the cryptocurrency due diligence vertical in our firm, I was really resistant to it, because again, it's, we've seen so many things come and go. But when I really started looking at it through, visionary eyes, if you will, I saw that cryptocurrency carries the same kind of energy signature. And I can't discern if it's blockchain specifically or cryptocurrency, that carries the same kind of frequency that I see emerging in the divine masculine, which, that leads us into a lot of the woo-woo kind of dialogue, which we could go down. But ultimately, that connection is there, and it's undeniable. But I don't want to dive too deep into that. I want to take a quick break. Before we do, let's let people know where they can go to find out more about you and about the Lucis Project.
Absolutely. So if you'd like to know more about us and what we're doing, please go to LucisDollar, which is LucisDollar.io. So LucisDollar.io. And a lot of the things we're talking about, we embody these things in that project. So if any of these concepts resonate with you, go check out LucisDollar.io, and hopefully you'll like what you see.
Awesome. Very cool. We'll take a quick break. We've been talking with Paul Barlow about the world is changing. Are you ready? And when we come back from the break, we're going to dive a little bit more into some of these concepts we're talking about. So stick with us, folks. We'll be right back.
Do you dream of a better world? A world where everyone has access to clean water and a healthy food supply? At LucisDollar, we don't just dream about it, we create it. Through the humanitarian efforts we fund, the next level technology we implement, and the high vibrational cooperative environments we design, LucisDollar is changing the world. Join the Lucis family and take part in this revolutionary approach to business, a revolutionary approach to life. Go now to LucisDollar.com.
Awesome. We're back. You've been listening to the Super Power Up podcast. We're talking today with Paul Barlow of LucisDollar about the world is changing. Are you ready? So before the break, Paul, we talked a little bit about Lucis and why you're involved in the project and all these really amazing things. So let's get a little bit more detailed about what is it? What is Lucis doing? What does it exist to do? Let's share that with the listeners.
Yeah. So what's most important to Lucis, in my opinion, because there's a lot of projects right now, and good projects with around this concept of cryptocurrency, of blockchain, and they're fulfilling a lot of needs. And they said there's a lot of power to it. So there's just a lot of different directions that you can go. What we decided to do within our project is to focus first on the ideology. And I say it's more of an ideological project first and foremost, and then we manifest different methods through which we can implement that ideology from that foundation. So ideologically, what we focus on is a concept we like to call cooperative capitalism. I've called it enlightened capitalism in the past, but it's really this concept, and we kind of what we talked about earlier, where, look, the thing we should fundamentally be focusing on, or what we believe, this is what we believe and what we're putting out there and encouraging you to consider for yourself, is that, social value, the impact on humanity, the impact on the world in general should be the first and foremost consideration and the first and foremost goal, or where you should orient your goals in any type of business or project. And so that should be the number one thing. Then number two should still be a profit motive, to turn a profit. And I know some people might resist that concept. I know a lot of people that think in this type of way reject the notion of profit, but I do believe that there more value is created when you think this way than otherwise. And so it's, we want to help humanity, we want to grow, we want to help the planet, but we want to help off the planet too, if we can get into whole kinds of conversations of where we want to go with this, but just want to progress and move things forward. But at the same time, remember that we're accountable to our activities and accountable to results. And when you can go out there and bring different people together, the sum of the parts becomes much greater than the whole. And to me, that's where profit comes from. It's a surplus of value that's created when you have individuals that come together and create more value together than they could have by themselves. And that's really, in my opinion, what the enlightened concept of a business or a project is all about. And that's what we are all about here at LucisDollar. So we have a number of projects that we've already put out there. And like I say, go to the website. I'm not going to get into a lot of the individual ones unless you ask specific ones today. But we've got a number of different projects we've already got on the table, a number of more in phases 2, 3, 4, 5 down the road. But you can count on with us that, once again, our focus primarily is going to be on bringing positive impact to the world and humanity as a whole, while holding ourselves accountable to that value creation proposition.
And I love all that. And just in full transparency, I was brought into the project as an advisor in vision integrity because of some of the concepts that Paul is talking about, to make sure that the implementation of those solutions and of the structures, I mean, everything down to the culture of the organization, to decisions made about, individuals to bring in, as well as the big vision kind of pictures, are in alignment energetically. And so that speaks volumes to a project to even entertain the idea that might be a concern. It's like, we understand business plans, we understand strategic sessions, we understand marketing, we understand all these things, but the idea that so many projects are coming forward now with these huge visions that people have been gifted with stewarding, how do you keep that in alignment? How do you make sure that the entity that is the business organism itself kind of stays on track with that? And I think it's people like you who come into an organization and say, look, this matters. Like, front and center, this matters. And so the idea that we're going to put this kind of, I won't even call it altruism, because it is self-preservation at its heart, but the idea that the big picture matters first, the heart and soul of the organization matters first, and the profit has to be a close second into that. And maybe not even a second, maybe even a parallel. Those two things have to marry up. And I think that's a dialogue that more and more businesses are starting to have, but certainly the minority.
So can I talk? Yeah, I'd like to talk to that for a minute, because that's you hit on a key point we've talked about before, which is when you create a business or a project or whatever, it is a separate entity, and a separate entity and energetic entity is created, in that. And I have to say, if that's a little out there for people, it is just the truth. And I mean, even the government says so. Your actual corporation papers, it is a person or whatever in the eyes of the government. So
I love that you brought that in. That was perfect.
It's true. It's, well, not to get too far off track, but I've heard of people that they drive in the carpool lane with their corporation papers in their right seat. So if they get pulled over, they can say, yeah, no, this is but we're not going to get too far into that. But the key to that, you said, so any entity that exists, its number one goal is self-preservation. And so that's where I point to that in my life and in business as the reason why a lot of these entities end up doing things that are really out of alignment with integrity and different things like that, because they're focused on self-preservation. And, you see human beings, animals, anything that is threatened will basically do anything they have to stay alive, right? And so you have to have this solid key vision to operate at a higher vibrational frequency, and you have to have the people involved in that organization to keep it pointed in the right direction. Because I think left to its own devices, by and large, most entities, people, organizations default to self-preservation over time, and that doesn't necessarily serve the greatest good.
Well, but let's take that even a step further and say, for high vibrational beings or people that have tapped into that and entities that are built on that, it is self-preservation to do it that way, because ultimately we know that doing it the other way is destruction. It can't last. And that's the irony is like, it absolutely, obviously you got me fired up now. That is the conundrum, is like, which frequency are you choosing to operate in, right? So the self-preservation from a base perspective is a trail to demise. The self-preservation from a higher frequency perspective is a trail to expansion and allows for the uplifting of everything, but we don't always see it that way. And it depends on, that's a big part of the advisor on vision integrity kind of perspective, is making sure that filter is front and center. And we can build profitable, successful, sustainable, scalable business ventures in that sort of modality. I believe it. I feel it. And truthfully, I think that if you don't, your business isn't going to last for very long.
Yeah, and it's to bring it back down to it's are you playing the short game or the long game? And the short game has been proven time and time again over the last 100 years and more. But just to use simple, you could go point to any They'll pick any company on any public stock market or whatever. If they're playing the short game, it ends to destruction. It just does. It's the companies that play the long game, and it's the organizations that play the long game that maybe which may mean making decisions right this second that aren't in your best interest right this second. If you can play and look long term, and you're right, long term it preserves you. It's a long term preservation strategy, and it's easier and simpler and quicker to look at the short term versus the long term, and that's how I've always couched it to people as we're sitting down and talking about visions and goals and where we're going with the company.
And I think that that's really valuable. But all of it, I'm going to add on to that, that there's also this, as we spend more and more time in that expansive space and really giving voice and energy to these concepts, you'll find that the short term or the immediate gratification or the immediate self-preservation over time starts to feel less and less appealing. Like it starts to feel abrasive. It starts to feel constrictive. It starts to just feel icky. And so that's one of the things I think we can do within all these organizations is train people to attune themselves and the people in their business and the business itself to this kind of expansive feeling, because then it's easy to discern when the decision's being made from a constricted space. But that takes practice. I mean, for an individual self-growth and for a business entity self-growth.
Well, yeah, and I'll kind of plug Superpower Experts with that myself, because I say any entity is made up of people, and so the individual people are going to inform that entity with their energy. And if as an individual you haven't gone through the steps to find a higher vibration, find a higher frequency, become more comfortable with who you are, and find your real self as a person, all of these different steps, which I say SPE helps people do, then it's going to you're going to inform this entity that you're part of in a way that isn't necessarily going to, reach your goals, especially if you've got long-term goals. So it's that individual work, people can put things off on the business as much as they want, but at the end, it's only as strong as the individuals that are part of it. So each of us has to take that responsibility. Especially, say, if you start a business or an organization, you're taking a massive responsibility upon yourself for personal growth as well as the growth of the entity itself.
I love that you said that.
Yeah.
Well, for one, because it plugged our company, but also because that's really what had me agreeing to that position within Lucis. Because at first I was like, no thanks. Like I said, I was pretty resistant. But the idea that there were, at the core of Lucis are three men, right? You, Josh Fair, and then Justin. And at the core of it is this really powerful triumvirate of this masculine energy, very evolved masculine energy. And I was like, you want me to do what? Like, how is this going to work? And the fact that all three of you have committed to holding yourselves accountable to your highest frequency, to being accountable to that, to allowing others to hold you accountable to that, and to growing transparently is what makes or breaks that venture. And from that perspective, for me to kind of be there to kind of hold the container of that and be the voice of that was easy, but it takes every single person on the team being willing to say, this matters. And this is important. And up until now, that just hasn't been a part of the profitability of business conversation. But I think it's becoming more and more mainstream. So kudos to you all for being leaders in that conversation.
Thank you. And I do agree with you. I think that's that counter movement against all you say, you can look at the world in that negative light. I can see where people come from, and yeah, sure, we can go find examples of that. But you're right, there's such a movement right now, and I'm glad that we can hopefully do our humble part to be a part of it. But we're by no means alone. We meet people like this all the time that have taken on these responsibilities and taken on that mantle, to say, okay, hey, not only this is not just about me, this is not just about my future, this is about the future of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, millions of people, and like I say, and the earth itself around me, and I'm going to hold myself accountable to that. So it's exciting, and I'm glad to play a part and try to live what we're preaching as much as possible.
Well, and I can attest to the fact that you all do, and it's not every day that people enter into that space and make those agreements. And Justin was kind of stuck because he married me, but The idea to voluntarily go into that space, I love that you call it a responsibility. It's kind of the whole, with great power comes great responsibility. And I liken it to child rearing. You have kids, and it's this idea of you own that, and certainly you can be a half-assed parent, you can be a half-assed business owner, but the ventures that are worthwhile and that create great ROI for the world are the ones that where we give it our all. And so I can honestly say that it's an honor to know you and to work with you and to see the progress that project is making and the really big work that it's chosen to take on in the world. For those of you who are entrepreneurs and who get this, that this stuff resonates with. Yes, it's work, and yes, it's different, but yes, it's worth it, and so know that you're not alone, and know that we're out there and we're here to support you in that, and that there are projects that you can collaborate with, like Lucis. Lucis stands to really uplift visionaries and other projects and other businesses, and they've got some viable solutions to actually make that work, which is novel. So Paul, thank you so much for what you're doing to the world, what you're contributing to the world, but mostly the space you're willing to stand in as an individual so that you can do that work in the world. I think that's crucial, and thank you for it.
Thank you, and I appreciate you having me on, and it's a pleasure to be here and always to share. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. And to all of you out there, before we break up, let's one more time let people know where. Before we break again, let's let everybody know where they can go to find out more about you.
Awesome. Yeah. So go to LucisDollar.com, LUCIS dollar.com. And hopefully you guys will like what you see there.
Is it .com or .io?
Oh, I'm sorry. So I get so caught up in things. LucisDollar.io, LucisDollar.io.
Perfect. Very cool. Well, and we'll have the link on the page too, folks, where you can go to check that out. So again, as always, we appreciate your loyalty. Thank you everyone for listening. And until next time, go out, uncover your superpowers, and change the world. Take care, everyone.
Are you ready to discover your superpowers? Go now to superpowerexperts.com and discover your superpowers today.